The royal palace of Assyrion floated high above the capital city, shining like a star that refused to fade. Its towers curved toward the sky, made of smooth silver metal and living crystal that glowed softly at night. Ships moved slowly around it, guided by invisible fields of energy, and below, the city stretched endlessly across the horizon. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of the main audience hall, trying to remain calm. He had faced war zones, pirate raids, and dangerous negotiations across several systems, but standing alone inside an alien royal court felt more stressful than any battlefield. He was human. That alone made him different. Most species in the Galactic Alliance viewed humans with curiosity. Some admired them for their resilience, others feared their unpredictability. Daniel had spent years proving that humans could be trusted, serving as a security officer and advisor wherever needed. But today felt different. The hall was filled with nobles from different worlds. Tall beings with shining skin, smaller creatures wrapped in layered robes, and others with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light, all watched him quietly. Conversation slowed whenever he moved. At the far end of the hall, the queen sat upon her throne. Queen Lorana was known throughout the Alliance as a calm and wise ruler. Her presence carried natural authority without effort. Her long silver hair fell across her shoulders, and her golden eyes studied everything carefully. Daniel had met her only a few times before, always during formal briefings. She rarely spoke more than necessary, which made this sudden personal summons even more confusing. A deep tone echoed through the hall, signaling the beginning of the audience. All conversations stopped. Daniel stepped forward when his name was called, feeling hundreds of eyes follow him. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed respectfully.
"Rise," the queen said gently.
He stood and met her gaze. "Human Daniel Carter," she began. "Your service to this world has been noted. You have protected our citizens without hesitation." "I simply followed my orders, Your Majesty," he replied. Soft murmurs moved through the crowd again. Humans were known for their straightforward answers, and some nobles found it unusual compared to their own formal speech. The queen stood slowly. That alone caused visible surprise. Royal protocol usually kept her seated during such meetings. She walked down the steps toward him, her cloak moving silently behind her. Daniel remained still, unsure what was about to happen. She stopped close enough that only he could clearly hear her. "My daughter wants you as her father," she whispered. "No one else." The words stunned him. For a moment he wondered if he had misunderstood the translation device in his ear.
"I
"Beg your pardon?" he said quietly. Her expression remained calm but carried deep emotion beneath the surface. "It is not what you imagine," she said. "She does not seek replacement. She seeks trust." Daniel's thoughts raced. He remembered the princess vaguely. Princess Elira was known for avoiding public events, since her father died during a border conflict years ago. Rumors described her as distant and difficult, refusing tutors and advisors alike. "I am a soldier," Daniel said carefully.
Whoa.
"Not a parent."
The queen nodded slowly. "That is exactly why she chose you," she replied.
He felt confusion grow. "She observed you during training exercises," the queen continued softly. "You treated others equally, without fear, without excessive respect, without hidden intention." She saw honesty. Daniel said nothing, unsure how to respond. "My daughter has rejected every guardian chosen by the court," the queen said. "But when she speaks of you, there is light in her voice again." Danielle glanced around. The nobles watched with increasing curiosity. Though they could not hear every word, they clearly understood that something important was happening. "What would you ask from me?" he said quietly. "To guide her," the queen replied, to stand beside her as a protector and teacher, to help her remember that connection does not always lead to loss. Daniel sensed the pain behind them. He hesitated. This role would place him deep inside royal politics. Some nobles already watched him with suspicion simply because he was human. Accepting such a position might create enemies he did not yet know. Before he could answer, a side door opened. A young figure entered the hall. Princess Elira. She walked without ceremony, ignoring the shocked expressions around her. She wore simple clothing instead of royal robes, and her eyes moved quickly until they found Daniel. The tension in her face eased immediately. She walked directly toward him. Daniel straightened slightly, unsure of proper protocol. She stopped in front of him and looked up.
"You came," she said softly. "I was summoned," he replied gently.
She shook her head. "No," she said. "You came!" The queen watched silently. The princess hesitated for only a moment before reaching out and taking his hand. Gasps spread through the hall. Royal etiquette rarely allowed physical contact with outsiders, especially someone of lower status. But she held his hand tightly as if afraid he might disappear. Daniel felt unexpected warmth. Her grip was small but strong. "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. The question carried more emotion than her calm voice revealed. He saw hope in her eyes, and fear. He thought of his own childhood, of moments when he wished someone had stayed when others left. Humans understood loss deeply. Perhaps that was why other species found them both strong and strange. Slowly, he nodded. "I will try," he said. Her face brightened instantly. The queen closed her eyes briefly, relief visible for only a second before she returned to her royal composure. But not everyone in the hall looked pleased. Some nobles exchanged sharp looks, clearly unhappy with a human entering royal family matters. Daniel noticed it immediately. This decision would not be easy. The princess did not release his hand as the queen addressed the court again, formally announcing that Daniel Carter would serve as a special guardian and mentor to the royal heir. Whispers grew louder. Daniel felt the weight of expectation settle on him. After the ceremony ended, he followed the princess through the corridors of the palace. Unlike the grand hall, these passages felt quieter and more personal, filled with soft lights and living plants growing along the walls.
"You don't have to act like everyone else," she said suddenly without looking at him. "I wasn't planning to," he replied.
She smiled slightly.
"I knew you wouldn't." They reached a balcony overlooking the city.
She stopped there, watching the lights below. "Everyone treats me like glass," she said after a moment. "Like I might break." Daniel leaned against the railing. "Maybe they are afraid of hurting you." "They already did," she said softly. He remained silent, allowing her space. "My father used to stand here," she continued. "He said the city looked like stars fallen to the ground." Daniel followed her gaze. "It does," he agreed. She looked at him again. "Will you lie to me like the others?" she asked.
"No," he said simply. Her shoulders relaxed.
"Good." A quiet moment passed between them. Not uncomfortable, but calm. Daniel realized that perhaps this was what she needed most. Someone who did not see her as only a princess. As the sun began to set behind distant towers, he felt something change inside him. This was no longer just a mission, it was a promise. And somewhere in the palace, unseen forces had already begun to move against him. The palace corridors felt quieter after the ceremony, but Daniel sensed that silence did not mean peace. He had spent enough time in military bases and political halls to understand when eyes were watching from hidden places. Princess Elira walked beside him, her steps slow but confident. She did not let go of his sleeve, almost as if she needed physical proof that he was still there. Servants bowed as they passed, though many glanced at Daniel with curiosity. News of the Queen's announcement had already spread across the palace.
"Well, Thank you for their process on your side, and you don't look scared, Alira said suddenly. Daniel gave a small smile.
I learned long ago that looking scared does not help. But are you? She asked. He thought for a moment before answering. Careful, yes. Scared, not exactly. She nodded slowly, as if considering his words carefully. They reached a garden hidden inside the palace, a wide-open space filled with glowing plants and flowing water channels. Artificial sunlight warmed the air, and the scent of alien flowers moved gently with the breeze.
This is where I come when I want everyone to stop talking, she said.
Daniel looked around. The place felt peaceful, far away from court politics. You chose well, he said. She sat on a stone bench, watching him quietly. Everyone thinks you accepted because the Queen ordered you, she asked. He corrected gently. I agreed. Why? Daniel paused. Humans were often direct, but this question felt important.
Because you asked me to stay, he said honestly.
Her eyes widened slightly. She looked away quickly, hiding a small smile. Silence settled between them again, comfortable this time. But far away, inside a high chamber overlooking the city, several nobles gathered in secret.
This is unacceptable, one of them said sharply.
A human guiding the royal heir? He is not even noble-born, another added. He is dangerous, a third voice said calmly.
Humans build loyalty quickly. If the princess grows attached to him, our influence weakens.
Then we remove him quietly. Back in the garden, Daniel felt a sudden chill. Years of survival had trained him to notice danger before it appeared. He scanned the surroundings subtly. Nothing obvious. Still, the feeling remained. Do you always look like that? Alira asked.
Like what? Like you're expecting someone to attack. He laughed softly. Old habits.
You saved people during the border war, didn't you?
I tried, he answered simply. Mother said you stayed behind when others retreated.
Daniel shrugged. Someone had to hold the line. She studied him closely, admiration clear in her expression. Before he could respond, a sharp sound echoed through the garden. Daniel turned instantly. A small drone shot through the air toward them, its surface dark, unfamiliar to palace design. Stay behind me, he said firmly. The drone moved fast, releasing a bright flash of light. Daniel reacted without hesitation, stepping forward and grabbing a nearby metal sculpture. He swung it into the drone's path, knocking it aside before it reached the princess. The device crashed into the ground, sparks flying. Guards rushed into the garden seconds later, weapons ready. Daniel held Alira gently behind him until he confirmed the threat had stopped. What was that? She asked quietly. Not a toy, he said. The guards surrounded the broken drone. One of them looked at Daniel with surprise. You reacted before alarms triggered. Instinct, he replied. Inside, he already understood. Someone had tested him. Queen Lirana arrived quickly after receiving the report. Her calm expression did not hide the anger in her eyes as she examined the damaged drone. This design does not belong to our security forces, she said quietly. Daniel crossed his arms. Someone wanted to see how fast I respond. The Queen looked at him sharply. You believe this was directed at you? At us, he corrected gently, glancing at the princess. Alira stood close to him, refusing to step away. The Queen watched the interaction, silently. Security will be increased, she said finally. Daniel nodded, but knew stronger guards would not solve everything. Political enemies rarely attacked openly. That evening, the princess insisted he join her for dinner in a smaller private chamber instead of the grand hall.
This is better, she said.
Less watching. Daniel agreed silently. They spoke about simple things. Earth, human traditions, stories of exploration. She listened closely, asking questions that revealed a curious and intelligent mind beneath her quiet exterior. "You speak differently from others," she said.
How? They hide meaning inside long words. You say things directly.
She laughed softly.
For the first time, Daniel saw genuine happiness in her expression.
But as night fell, danger moved again. A guard approached quickly, whispering urgent news to Daniel. One of his assigned rooms had been searched without authorization. Someone was digging into his past. Daniel remained calm outwardly, but inside he understood the message. He was not welcome by everyone. Later, standing alone on a balcony overlooking the city, he thought about leaving. Walking away would remove danger from the princess, but footsteps approached behind him. "You're thinking about leaving?" she said quietly. He turned, surprised. "Why would you say that?" "Because everyone leaves," she answered simply. Her honesty struck deeper than he expected. He sighed, softly. "I promised to try," he said. She stepped closer. "Then don't break it," he nodded slowly. "I won't." She smiled, relief clear in her eyes. From that moment, Daniel understood that protecting her would require more than physical strength. It would require patience, trust, and standing against powerful forces hidden within the court. And somewhere in the palace, those forces prepared their next move. The palace did not feel the same after the drone incident. Even though guards increased their patrols and scanners checked every corridor, Daniel sensed something deeper moving beneath the calm surface. Political tension was harder to detect than physical danger. It moved silently through whispers and hidden decisions. Princess Elira noticed the change too. She walked closer to him than before, as if she understood that something unseen was happening around them. Morning light filled the training courtyard where Daniel stood waiting. He had asked permission to train her personally, not only to help her grow stronger, but also to teach awareness. "You want me to fight?" she asked, holding the lightweight practice staff awkwardly.
"I want you to learn balance," he replied.
"Fighting is only part of survival." She nodded, trying to copy his stance. The first attempt was clumsy. She lost balance and almost fell, but Daniel stepped forward quickly and steadied her. "You're too tense," he said gently. "I don't like failing," she admitted.
"Everyone fails while learning," he answered. "Humans fail a lot. That's how we improve."
She gave a small laugh. They continued training slowly. Daniel kept instructions simple, focusing on movement rather than strength. Over time, she began to relax, her movements smoother. Several palace staff watched quietly from a distance, surprised to see the princess laughing during training. She had rarely smiled in public since her father's death. Across the courtyard, two nobles observed with less friendly expressions. "He is changing her," one said.
"That is exactly the problem," the other replied. Later that day, Queen Lirana summoned Daniel privately.
The chamber was smaller than the grand hall, designed for personal conversations. Soft light reflected from the walls, creating a calm atmosphere. "You have gained her trust, faster than anyone else," the queen said. Daniel nodded slightly. "She wants honesty." The queen sighed softly. "Some members of the court do not approve of your influence."
"I expected that," he replied.
"They believe a human cannot understand our traditions," she continued. Daniel met her gaze.
"Maybe I don't understand everything, but I understand protecting someone." The queen's expression softened. "I believe that," she said quietly. She paused before adding, "Be careful. Political opposition rarely attacks directly."
Daniel left the chamber thoughtful.
That evening, Elira insisted on visiting the city below. She had not gone outside the palace freely in years. "It will be safe," she said, almost as if convincing herself. Daniel arranged a small escort, but chose simple clothing to avoid attention. The city felt alive, glowing signs, floating vehicles, and crowds of different species moving together. Elira looked around with wonder, her eyes bright.
"I forgot how loud it is," she said. "Life is noisy," Daniel answered.
They walked through a marketplace filled with music and laughter. Some citizens recognized the princess but kept respectful distance, sensing her desire for normalcy. For the first time, she felt like a regular person. But Daniel's instincts never rested. He noticed a figure following them. Too careful, too consistent. He slowed slightly, guiding Elira toward a quieter street.
"What's wrong?"
she whispered. "We're being watched," he said calmly. Her posture stiffened, but she trusted him enough not to panic. The follower moved closer. Daniel turned suddenly, confronting the stranger. The figure froze before speaking quickly. "I mean no harm." It was a young alien reporter, clearly nervous. She wanted an interview with the princess. Daniel studied her carefully, then allowed her to leave after a warning. Elira laughed quietly after the tension faded.
"You scared her," she said. "Better safe than sorry," he replied.
As they returned to the palace, another presence moved unseen above them, a hidden drone tracking their route. Back inside, Daniel reviewed security footage later that night. He noticed small irregularities, doors opening briefly without record, signals flickering for only seconds. Someone inside the palace was helping their enemies. The realization made his expression harden. The next morning, during a council gathering, tension finally surfaced openly. One noble stepped forward. "Your Majesty, it is inappropriate for an outsider to guide the royal heir." Queen Lirana remained calm.
"He serves at my request. Tradition must be respected,"
the noble insisted. Daniel stood silently beside Elira. She suddenly stepped forward. "He stays," she said firmly. The room fell silent. Her voice carried strength that surprised many.
"He listens to me," she continued.
"He does not treat me like a symbol." Some nobles looked uncomfortable, realizing the princess had begun to regain confidence. Daniel felt pride, but also concern. Speaking against powerful figures created new risks. Later that day, danger returned more directly. During another training session, alarms suddenly failed across part of the palace. Lights flickered. Daniel's instincts reacted immediately. "Stay behind me," he said, moving toward the exit. 3 masked attackers entered the courtyard silently. Weapons drawn, they moved with professional precision. Daniel grabbed a training staff, pushing Elira behind a stone pillar. The first attacker rushed forward. Daniel sidestepped and struck quickly, disarming him with controlled force. He avoided unnecessary harm, focusing on defense. The second attacker fired a stun blast. Daniel pulled Elira down just in time as energy passed over them. Guards rushed in moments later, forcing the attackers to retreat. The fight ended quickly, but the message was clear.
This was no longer a test.
It was an attempt to remove him. Elira looked shaken but determined. "They want you gone," she said. "Will you leave?" He shook his head. "I made a promise."
Her eyes filled with relief.
That night, Daniel stood alone on the balcony again, watching the endless city lights. He realized the situation had grown far more dangerous than expected, yet he felt stronger than before. Humans adapted, humans protected, and now he understood that protecting Elira meant more than guarding her body. It meant helping her become strong enough to stand on her own. Inside the palace, conspirators prepared their final plan, unaware that the human they wanted removed was far more resilient than they imagined. The palace no longer felt like a place of quiet safety. After the attack in the training courtyard, tension filled every corridor. Guards stood at double positions, scanning devices hummed constantly, and servants moved more carefully than before. Daniel walked beside Princess Elira through a long hallway lined with glowing glass panels. Outside the windows, the city lights shimmered like distant stars, but inside the palace, shadows felt heavier.
"You're thinking too much," Elira said softly, watching him. "I always think too much when someone tries to remove me," he replied with a small smile.
She didn't laugh this time.
They will not stop, will they? She asked.
No, Daniel said honestly. Not until they believe they cannot win.
She noticed slowly.
Since he arrived, she had changed. She stood straighter, spoke with more confidence, and no longer avoided eye contact during conversations with nobles. The change had not gone unnoticed, and that was part of the danger. Inside a hidden chamber deep within the palace, several conspirators gathered again.
"The attempts failed," one said sharply. "He adapts too quickly," another replied.
A taller figure stood in silence before speaking.
"Then we force the Queen's hand."
If the princess is endangered publicly, she will remove the human herself.
Their plan was already moving forward.
That evening, the palace hosted a formal gathering, an event designed to show unity after recent disturbances. Nobles from many systems arrived, wearing elaborate clothing and speaking with carefully controlled politeness. Daniel stayed near Elira, his eyes constantly scanning the room. Music played softly, while conversations filled the air. Queen Lorana sat on her throne, calm but watchful.
"Relax,"
Elira whispered.
"I will relax when this ends without incident,"
he replied. She smiled slightly. That sounds like something my father would say. Daniel felt the weight of her words, but said nothing. As the event continued, a group of performers entered the hall. They moved gracefully, drawing attention away from the guards. Daniel watched carefully. Something felt wrong. A sudden flicker of light caught his attention. A reflection from a hidden device near one of the pillars. "Stay close," he said quietly to Elira. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed sharply. Gasps spread through the hall. A loud sound echoed, and smoke filled part of the chamber. Panic began to rise among the guests. Daniel moved instantly, guiding Elira behind a protective barrier. His eyes searched through the haze. Several masked figures rushed forward. This was not a simple disruption. It was a direct attempt. Guards engaged the attackers, energy flashes lighting the room. One attacker broke through toward the princess. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation. He blocked the strike using a ceremonial staff nearby, pushing the attacker back with controlled force. Years of training guided every movement. He did not fight with anger, but with focus. The attacker attempted another move, but Daniel anticipated it, disarming him quickly. More guards arrived, forcing the remaining attackers to retreat. Silence slowly returned as the smoke cleared. Guests stood frozen, shocked by what they had witnessed. Queen Lorana rose from her throne, her expression calm but powerful.
"Seal the exits," she ordered. The attackers were captured within minutes.
Daniel remained beside Elira, checking carefully to ensure she was unharmed. "I'm fine," she said quietly, though her voice trembled slightly.
"You were brave,"
he said. She looked at him with gratitude. Soon after, the captured attackers revealed something unexpected. They were not outsiders. They had been hired by members of the court. The truth spread quickly through the palace. During an emergency council meeting, the conspirators were brought forward. Their expressions showed frustration rather than fear.
"You have allowed an outsider to weaken our traditions," one accused the queen. You endangered the princess, Queen Lorana replied coldly. We acted to protect the future of the throne, another said.
Daniel remained silent, standing behind Elira. The queen turned toward him. Human Daniel Carter, she said formally. You stood against danger without hesitation. You protected my daughter and this court.
He nodded slightly. I only did what was right.
He did more than that, she said firmly. He helped me become strong again. Her voice carried across the chamber, confident and clear. I choose him as my guardian, she continued, not because he is human, but because he listens, protects, and tells the truth. Queen Lyrana watched her daughter with pride. The decision is made, the queen said finally. The conspirators were removed from power immediately. Days passed, and the palace slowly returned to calm. One evening, Daniel stood again on the balcony overlooking the city. The wind moved gently around him. Elira joined him quietly.
You stayed, she said.
I said I would try, he answered. He did more than try. He smiled slightly.
She looked at the city lights below. I don't feel alone anymore, she said softly. Daniel felt something warm settle inside him. Not pride, but peace. Humans were often called strong because of their ability to fight, but true strength sometimes meant staying when it would be easier to leave. Queen Lorana watched them from a distance, her expression thoughtful. She understood that the bond forming between them was not about replacing the past, but building something new. Over time, Elira trained harder, spoke more confidently during council meetings, and began preparing for her future as a leader. Daniel remained beside her, not as a replacement father, but as a guide she trusted. The palace learned to accept the human who refused to abandon his promise. And across the stars, stories began to spread about a human who stood in a royal court, faced powerful enemies, and proved that strength was not defined by birth or title, but by loyalty and heart.